Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and I know this is so long overdue. I apologize for not having any book-specific videos for quite a few weeks now. Life has just been super busy, and it's the Christmas season. This is my favorite time of year, and so I am just soaking it up and doing Christmas stuff nonstop. But I finished reading this book a while ago now, and just hadn't had the time to plan or film a video, but here we are. Let's do it. I'm really excited to talk to you about Circe. This is by Madeline Miller, and it was published in 2018. Now, some people will say it doesn't matter if you read Song of Achilles first or Circe first, but since Song of Achilles was published first, I just like to read in published order. And also there's going to be spoilers in this video, just right off the bat, let's say that. So if you haven't read it and you don't want a single spoiler, stop now. If you don't care, keep watching. So there will be some mentions of Song of Achilles in this book, and that's why I really wanted to make sure I read Song of Achilles first, because I didn't want any... If you don't know the plot of Song of Achilles and you read this, it will be spoiled. Song of Achilles will be spoiled for you by the few tiny little mentions in this book, but because I'd already read it, I was so excited to see that mentioned in here. I do love the name Circe because people often call me that when they see my name written. Circe is one of their guesses, their best guesses. So I'm just fond of it already. But as I mentioned in my video about Song of Achilles, I used to be very, very into Greek mythology when I was younger. We studied it in elementary school extensively. We had a whole unit for an entire year on it. So there was a time when I knew all of these characters and all of these stories, and I was obsessed. I've forgotten everything, and it's fantastic because all of this was completely new to me. So I didn't know what was going to happen to Circe. I forgot to look up pronunciations of names. Just forgive me if I say things in a really crazy way. Okay, I'm going to read you the back first. In the house of Helios, god of the sun and mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born. But Circe is a strange child, not powerful like her father, nor viciously alluring like her mother. Turning to the world of mortals for companionship, she discovers that she does possess power, the power of witchcraft, which can transform rivals into monsters and menace the gods themselves. Threatened, Zeus banishes Circe to a deserted island where she hones her occult craft and crosses paths with many of the most famous figures in all of mythology, including the Minotaur, Daedalus, that's one, I don't know if I'm saying it right, and his doomed son Icarus, the murderous Medea, and of course, wily Odysseus. But there is danger too for a woman who stands alone, and Circe unwittingly draws the wrath of both men and gods, ultimately finding herself pitted against one of the most terrifying and vengeful of the Olympians. To protect what she holds dear, Circe must summon her strength and choose once and for all whether she belongs with the gods she is born from or the mortals she has come to love. Oh, watch your tail, watch your tail. There's a candle. I don't want him to put his tail in the candle. So this book is interesting because it doesn't follow a very standard story arc. I guess you could look at it as a story in 3 acts, which is standard, but some people in their reviews were bored by the pace of the book, and I can see how it doesn't move with as much urgency as Song of Achilles, but this is a very internal story. Most of it is in Circe's head and her dealing with her exile and finding herself, discovering who she really is and what she wants with this life of immortality, basically, coming to grips with the fact that she's going to live forever. Okay, we will get to all that. But yeah, so the first big section is her childhood, and it is very, very sad. And then you have the in-between, where there's a lot with meeting different people. We're going to see different characters come in and out of her life, and the big one is Odysseus, but my favorite is Daedalus. And then you have the whole section post Odysseus. And that section wasn't even as long as I thought it would be, considering how much weight it carried, but whatever. We have so much to get into here, and it's already been 5 minutes. I can't remember how to do videos, so just stick with me. Yeah, so after I read Song of Achilles and was completely in love with it, I had to pick this up. Pretty much now I'll read anything that she ever writes, and the writing in here is absolutely beautiful, to be expected. And I related to Circe so much, which at certain points was not fun. I mean, this is not a happy book, obviously. She really gives us a lot of her inner turmoil, and I found myself relating to a lot of it. The childhood trauma and the isolation and the string of lovers who were, you know, the ones like Hermes who are just here for a good time, and then the ones you really love who you lose, and just this journey towards self-actualization. It was all extremely relatable and painful. So let's get into the many, many, many things I want to read out loud for you. Starting at the very beginning, and she's talking about her father. Of course, he did not consider how black it would be when he was gone. My father has never been able to imagine the world without himself in it. So, like, I realized how many times I was pulling out things about her dad, and every time I did, I would just write "Dad" in big letters on my whiteboard over here. Yeah, there's a lot of that. So this shows us a great example of the self-absorption of the gods. And when I was studying Greek mythology as a kid, I don't remember learning or thinking at all about the gods being these awful beings who really just meddle in people's lives because they're bored, and they're basically just ruled by jealousy and anger and pride. Hello, baby. Hello. And yeah, but this book is, you get a lot of that. You get a lot of descriptions of how the gods are awful. And of course it's coming from first person point of view from Circe, so she's gonna lay it on thick with how much she doesn't agree with the gods. Even though she is a goddess, she is a lower goddess, a nymph. So we get a lot of examples of mortal versus immortal. You cannot know how frightened gods are of pain. There is nothing more foreign to them, and so nothing they ache more deeply to see. So there we have the reasoning for why gods like to cause so much pain on Earth for mortals, because they're fascinated by it and they fear it more than anything because they have never experienced it. And what we don't understand, what we can't understand, is often the scariest thing of all to us. I love this, the way that she puts this here when she's talking about her childhood. Sorry. I found a new thought in myself. I am embarrassed to tell it, so rudimentary it seems, like an infant's discovery that her hand is her own, but this is what I was then, an infant. The thought was this, that all my life had been murk and depths, but I was not a part of that dark water. I was a creature within it. I think there's many ways to read this, but like at first glance, it feels like she's saying you can escape your childhood, you can escape the things that were done to you, or you don't have to let them define you, because you are not this murky depth. You are something that is surviving in it. You're a creature that is still managing to survive despite living in this environment. I thought that was really an interesting way of saying it. But of course I could not die. I would live on through each scalding moment to the next. This is the grief that makes our kind choose to be stones and trees rather than flesh. So, yeah, it's like there's any way to escape feeling, anything forever. If there's any way to escape that, some gods will take it. And it's so sad how many times she grapples with this wish that she could just escape living, not necessarily die or harm herself, but I've often had this thought, I wish I could just take a break for a while, for a long time, like years. There's that great part in Bo Burnham's Inside when he says that. I can't remember the exact quote, but if you know, you know. But she gives us a lot of foreshadowing here that she does not like being immortal, that it feels unnatural to her. So I think this is after she helps Prometheus, maybe, or at some point in her, before she's exiled. Perhaps they will send guards for me, I thought, but why should they? I was no danger in the world. So this really bummed me out because she's too forgotten to even be punished. And we'll see this again. Let's see. There was a part of me, I think, that had hoped for a crag in the Caucasus after all, and an eagle diving for my liver, but Scylla was no Zeus and I was no Prometheus. We were nymphs, not worth the trouble. So while Prometheus got this massive punishment for giving fire to man, he has an eagle take out his liver every single day, and then it regrows at night, every day, over and over. So she's almost hurt that she doesn't get this massive punishment like he does, because like Scylla, she's just a nymph. So what trouble can she really cause? And then what I love about in this book is the way that she shows us, oh, a nymph, just a woman can actually be incredibly powerful, more powerful than most of the men that she meets, and most of the higher gods that she meets and goddesses. So it's a good story of not underestimating people. Don't ever underestimate people because you don't know what they're capable of. And even if they're not capable of wild things, then they still deserve to be noticed, and she is just forgotten no matter what she does. It's like when kids act out in order to get attention. So often kids who are really misbehaving are just doing it because they're just never noticed at all. Okay, here's another one with Dad. She gets to her island where she is banished and sees the home, and it's this beautiful, beautiful place with all kinds of like artisan things in it, and full of food and everything she could need. It says, "That was my new home, a monument to my father's pride. Even our exiles live better than kings. You see how deep our strength runs. If you strike us, Olympian, we rise higher than before." So he's trying to show Zeus, like, look, even our exiles get the best of the best. Like, if you try and mess with me, you're gonna get it. So Dad, everything is about him. The worst of my cowardice had been sweated out. In its place was a giddy spark. I will not be like a bird bred in a cage, I thought, too dull to fly, even when the door stands open. I stepped into those woods and my life began. So here, she's on her island and she is making the decision to make the best of it. I love these descriptions of her discovering the island. I stroked the glossy brown scorpions who braved me with their tails. Their poison was barely a pinch. I was drunk, as the wine and nectar in my father's halls had never made me. No wonder I have been so slow, I thought. All this while I have been a weaver without wool, a ship without the sea, yet now look where I sail. Perfect. That's one of those great Madeline Miller ways of describing things. She just never was allowed to reach her full potential because she wasn't given what she needed to do that. Okay. So, some more about the way that immortal gods view mortals. Of all the mortals on the earth, there are only a few the gods will ever hear of. Consider the practicalities. By the time we learn their names, they are dead. They must be meteors indeed to catch our attention. The merely good, you are dust to us. Ooh, perfect. I've always been really fascinated by this concept, and I think it might have come from Lord of the Rings initially, from the elves living forever, and especially that relationship between Arwen and Aragorn, and how do you interact with another person who, to you, is like blink of an eye. That's their lifespan, and you have all of eternity. So of course this is how most gods would look at people. They are just meaningless because they don't last. Another dad one. Is this another dad one? Yeah. So when her sister calls her to attend the birth of the Minotaur, she goes with these sailors, and she is not very nice to them. It says he was unfailingly polite, offering food and wine, a bedroll, but he did not linger. What did I expect? I had loosed my wrath on him as if I were my father. One more thing that I had ruined. Ooh, that one hurt. I saw this meme that was like, a girl is just a combination of, I can't remember, like a sweet little baby bunny and all of the worst parts of her father. Something like that. So this line, one more thing that I had ruined, just hit me hard. I've talked about this a lot, my self-blame and unwarranted guilt and shame. She carries that heavily, and she's already, what, at least a couple hundred years old at this point, maybe more? It was kind of hard to keep track of time because there's a lot of time that passes in this book. So she's had a lot of time to stew in that unwarranted shame, and she does carry a lot of regret about what she did to Scylla, and her turning into a monster that now is going to eat innocent men until the end of time. Most gods and mortals have lives that are tied to nothing. They tangle in wind, now here, now there, according to no set plan. But then there are those who wear their destinies like nooses, whose lives run straight as planks, however they try to twist. It is these that our prophets may see. So that was an interesting line because, you sometimes wonder, can the gods really control and see everything that's going on? And if so, doesn't that mean, I don't know. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it just seems like everything's planned and there's no mystery, and so, like, wouldn't the gods always know what's going on and there would be no conflict ever? Well, they can only see these particular people, these ones that have, like, really strong fates, and that's very interesting. Like, what makes somebody have a more powerful fate than another? Like Achilles, like, his fate was written, and we'll see with Circe's son as well. It's like she is trying to fight against his fate, which she manages to do. And yeah, I always have a lot of questions about that. Like, if you're able to change someone's fate, then, like, is anything set in stone, or what? So she's talking about her sister having birthed the Minotaur. It says, all the world would tell the story of the Queen of Crete, maker and mother of the great flesh-eating bull. And the gods would do nothing. Think of all the prayers they would get. So that's a great moment to look at creation versus destruction. The gods can choose, or they do choose a lot, to just cause destruction or let destruction happen, because they will get so many prayers, they'll get so much laid on their altars, and they love that. They eat it up. So they're just all about chaos, except for when they choose their favorites. You know, they'll pick their favorite dude and like root for him his whole life, and then he'll die, and then I guess they go back to just being a jerk to everybody else. It's a really wild concept. Oh, that wasn't even what I meant to say. I'm looking at two different notes here. I guess it can apply to the second thing, because the second quote on the same page says, this was how mortals found fame, I thought, through practice and diligence, tending their skills like gardens until they glowed beneath the sun. But gods are born of ichor and nectar. Their excellence is already bursting from their fingertips, so they find their fame by proving what they can mar, destroying cities, starting wars, breeding plagues and monsters. All that smoke and savor rising so delicately from our altars, it leaves only ash behind. Okay, so they kind of tie together. But I thought that was interesting. Their fame comes from what they can destroy, because they're already perfect. They're already great at everything. So what can they ruin? Yeah. Oh no. And then the first quote I read on there was me trying to say religion is corrupt because the gods are doing terrible things in order to get prayers from people. I really have so many notes on here. It's like legitimately hard to read. Oh, her sister's just horrible. I think this is her talking. It's funny that even after all this time you still believe you should be rewarded just because you have been obedient. I thought you would have learned that lesson in our father's halls. None shrank and simpered as you did, and yet great Helios stepped on you all the faster because you were already crouched at his feet. Ugh. Horrible. But a good point. Don't make yourself small for anyone. While you're down there, it's easier for them to step on you. Thought that was a great image. Oh my lord, this is going to be a long video. Oh lord, help me, do I even have time? Okay, we'll be fine. Again, I hope I'm saying his name right, Daedalus. I'm obsessed with him. This is so, like, we don't get any sexy sex scenes. Like, there's not any, like, real sex scenes in this book like we had in Song of Achilles. So that was missing for me, but this is sexy. We lit no tapers. The room was dark and warm from the day's heat. Shadows draped the bed. No frogs sounded, no birds called. It was as if we had found the still heart of the universe. Nothing moved except for us. So beautiful. So beautiful and so doomed. Which is my favorite kind of love affair. Unfortunately. Okay. So, yeah, we know he doesn't survive. It says, Daedalus did not long outlive his son. His limbs turned gray and nerveless, and all his strength was transmuted into smoke. I had no right to claim him, I knew it. But in a solitary life, there are rare moments when another soul dips near yours, as stars once a year brush the earth. Such a constellation was he to me. Ooh, that gives me goosebumps. I really think he was her true love before, until the one that she finds at the very end. But he more than Odysseus and Hermes and Glaucus and whatever, he was the best. He was closest to understanding her. And that just makes me so sad. She was alone for so long. She's so used to being alone, but there's just this one moment where she gets to be close to another soul, and it's a good one. Here she's describing, after her sister says that she's never going to get to leave her island, she says, in defiance, I threw myself into my old life. I did what I liked the moment that I thought of it. I sang upon the beaches, rearranged my garden, I called the pigs and scratched their bristled backs, brushed the sheep and summoned wolves to lie panting on my floor. The lion rolled her yellow eyes at them, but she behaved herself, for it was my law that all my animals bear each other. And I just wrote, sounds amazing. Like, that sounds pretty perfect to me. The way that she talks about her lion, like, my cat's literally on my lap right now. You know how I feel about cats. The lion, beautiful and very, very sad that she couldn't live forever. That part freaking destroyed me, so let's not talk about it. Okay, so she's talking about Hermes. One moment I would be laughing, and the next his jests turned sour in my throat. When his hands reached for me, I felt a strange dislocation. They were perfect and unscarred. My ambivalence, of course, only encouraged him. Any challenge was a game, and any game a pleasure. If I had loved him, he would have been gone. Yet my revulsion brought him back and back. Haven't we all been with a Hermes? I just thought, like, at this point she's thinking, I would rather have no one, and that's where I would be at, too. I would rather have no one than this little joker that shows up here to, like, poke at me and tell me all the gossip, and if I show at all that I have feelings for him, he'll be grossed out and leave. It's like, okay, bye, leave then. So talking about mortals again, no matter how vivid they were in life, no matter how brilliant, no matter the wonders they made, they came to dust and smoke. Meanwhile, every petty and useless god would go on sucking down the bright air until the stars went dark. Just like with Song of Achilles, I really need to go back, reread this, and just annotate the crap out of it. Like every time that she talks about mortals. Make a little note. Okay. I sifted and resifted my memories of Aeetes, her brother. All those hours we had leaned against each other. That old sickening feeling returned, that every moment of my life I had been a fool. Another part where I really, really relate to her. One of the worst fears, and I don't know why, one of the worst fears, foolishness. Being seen as a fool, acting like a fool, realizing later that you were a fool. So I felt very seen with that line. Okay, this part where she starts to get nymphs sent to her damn house all the time, I was going crazy on her behalf. They whispered and rustled from every corner. There was always someone leaning moon-faced over a pool when I wanted to swim. As I passed, their snickering laughter washed against my heels. I would not live that way again. Not on Aeea. Horrible. Horrible. Can you imagine having all that freedom and space to yourself, and then a bunch of, like, people who remind you of your childhood bullies, and the reason, like, part of the reason you're so traumatized, they all just show up and giggle on your island? Oh, hell no. Okay. About Hermes. He seemed to think I would go mad with jealousy and loneliness and turn them into rats indeed. 100 years he had been coming to my island, and in all that time he had never cared for more than his own entertainment. Once again, been there. So here she's looking at sailors who've washed up on her shore. I felt a warmth run through me. My fingers itched as if for needle and thread. Here was something torn that I could mend. So it's not only does she want a project, but it's specifically this project of more humans that she can help, because she remembers how she helped Glaucus. Well, she has regrets about how she helped him, but this fascination with mortals hasn't gone away, and now she's completely alone, and so she's going to be more likely to welcome anybody onto her island, even if they look like trouble. And they were trouble. So when she's trying to decide if she should do this spell to make all the sailors go to sleep so that they can't hurt her, she says, I almost said it then, the spell word that would send them to sleep, but even after all the years that had passed, there was a piece of me that still only spoke what I was bid. A great way to give us this image of trauma, that she's basically just had her brain wired this way from childhood, that she will do what she's told, and like say anything to be noticed and to be loved, not just noticed, to be valued. So this is after she's been assaulted. She says, the purple bruise at my throat was turning green at its edges. I pressed it, felt the splintered ache. Tear down, I thought. Tear down and build again. So this is where she decides to take revenge, and it's also a resolution for herself that she is not going to live the way that she was anymore. So then we see different types of mortals. Some of the men that come to the island don't mean her any harm. They were pious men, honestly lost, and I would feed them, and if there was a handsome one among them, I might take him to my bed. It was not desire, not even its barest scrapings. It was a sort of rage, a knife I used upon myself. I did it to prove my skin was still my own. And did I like the answer I found? And then on that page, I did not pretend to be immortal. I showed my lambent yellow eyes at every turn. None of it made a difference. I was alone and a woman. That was all that mattered. This chapter is really rough to read. She's just showing us how a woman by herself is seen in this world, which is not unlike our own. No sign of brothers or fathers or sons, no vengeance that would follow after. If I were valuable to anyone, I would not be allowed to live alone. That just made me so deeply sad and angry, because, you know, there are still people who think this way. And this is, you know, these are stories from thousands of years ago, and it seems like misogyny will never end. But no, let's not get dark. Maybe everything will be great one day. I just love this line. My cats, they are always tumbling something. Cute little pick-me-up. My cats are always tumbling something. He's still just snoozing on my lap. So cute. Let's see. She gets a little reckless. No, I thought I was not careful. I was reckless, headlong. He was another knife. I could feel it. A different sort, but a knife still. I did not care. I thought, give me the blade. Some things are worth spilling for. So, this is Odysseus, right? Yeah. So this is where she's like, Odysseus is probably trouble. This is all probably not going to turn out great. But I was going to say I'm here for a good time, not a long time, but she is here for a long time. But like also been there, you know, when you're just so done, you're like, okay, this person's terrible for me. I don't care. I reserve the right to have my fun and see how terribly things can turn out. So this is, she's saying years later, song is made of her meeting with Odysseus. The proud witch undone before the hero's sword, kneeling and begging for mercy, humbling women seems to me a chief pastime of poets, as if there can be no story unless we crawl and weep. So it makes you ask, why aren't strong women interesting to the poets of the old days? Why are so many stories about women in trouble, women being shown as weak? Why? It's really freaking scary when you think about it. Okay, here's a mention of Patroclus and Achilles, so I just have to say it. So Odysseus is talking about Achilles. He says his lover Patroclus was Achilles' best part. He didn't like me much, but then the good ones never do. Achilles went mad when he died, nearly mad anyway. Just a little mention of them. God, I wish I could reread that book for the first time. So Circe is looking at her body and thinking about how many scars Odysseus has that shows everything that he's been through, and she doesn't have any. She tried to imagine it, her body written over with its history. She says, my palm with its lightning streak, my hand missing its fingers, the 1,000 cuts from my witch work, the gristled furrows of my father's fire, the skin of my face like some half-melted taper, and those were only the things that had left marks. There would be no salutes. What had Aeetes called an ugly nymph? A stain upon the face of the world. My smooth belly glowed beneath my hand, the color of honey shining in the sun. I drew him down to me. I was a golden witch who had no past at all. And she doesn't like that. She does not like having no past. So some more foreshadowing. Another dad part here. He went on with his memories. Telemachus' first bite of bread, his first word, how he loved goats and hiding beneath chairs, giggling to be found. He had more stories of his son from a single year, I thought, than my father had of me in all eternity. Ouch. Just ow. Death's brother is the name that poets give to sleep. For most men, those dark hours are a reminder of the stillness that waits at the end of days. But Odysseus' slumber was like his life, tossed and restless, heavy with murmurs that made my wolves prick up their ears. I watched him in the pearl-gray light of dawn, the tremors of his face, the striving tension in his shoulders. He twisted the sheets as if they were opponents he tried to throw in a wrestling match. A year of peaceful days he had stayed with me, and still every night he went to war. Just thought that was a good paragraph describing PTSD, and there's a lot about it later where you'll see Odysseus clearly struggling with PTSD from being in the war and then thinking everybody is a threat, including his own son who comes to find him. Another mention of Patroclus and Achilles. Last year, Odysseus had helped me. I touched the thought like a bruise, testing its ache. When he was gone, would I be like Achilles, wailing over his lost lover, Patroclus? I tried to picture myself running up and down the beaches, tearing at my hair, cradling some scrap of old tunic he had left behind, crying out for the loss of half my soul. I could not see it. That knowledge brought its own sort of pain. But perhaps that is how it was meant to be. In the stories, gods and mortals never joined for long. So after she has Odysseus's baby, he is completely wild. She says, he only screamed louder. Whatever made the prince Telemachus so sweet, I thought it must have come from Penelope. This was the child I deserved. Oh, that was just such a sad line where you see, in times of difficulty, her self-hatred rears up again. She's not been able to get rid of it, because it is so beaten into her from being tortured by her family. It was autumn and I was boiling the fruits in syrup for winter. I could have made the trees bloom fresh at any time, but this was something I had come to enjoy. The bubbling sugars, the translucent jewel colors, the storing up of a good season in my jars. So, some more foreshadowing of how much she enjoys a mortal life, of doing things the normal way and not having to have control over everything like the gods do. Okay, another dad part. This is Telemachus talking. I was angry by then. I told him that there was no conspiracy, there never had been, and he would do better saying 3 kind words to our men than plotting how to kill them. What does that say? The truth is, I think he would have preferred me as a traitor. At least then I would have been a son he could understand. So, Telemachus also has serious daddy issues, like Circe. Interesting. Very interesting. So this is when Odysseus gets to talk to Achilles in the underworld. Says, Achilles, once best of the Greeks, who chose an early death as payment for eternal fame. Your father spoke to the hero warmly, praising him and assuring him of his reputation among men, but Achilles reproached him. He said he regretted his proud life and wished he had lived more quietly and happily. So, it's like, I'm glad that he gets to be with Patroclus in the underworld, but he wishes that he had not been so damn proud. They could have been alive in the real world for a lot longer together. He was no storyteller, as he had said, but that made it more enjoyable somehow, watching his serious face as he described flying horses and golden apples. The room was warm and the vintage good. My skin had begun to feel soft as wax. I just love that description. Chef's kiss. Soft as wax. But there was a contained quality to Telemachus, a quiet assurance that made him companionable without being intrusive. The creature he most reminded me of, I realized, was my lion. They had the same upright dignity, the same steady gaze with deep-set humor, even the same earthbound grace which pursued their own ends while I pursued mine. Oh. If she finds somebody who reminds her of her lion, that's probably her soulmate. And this part about pursuing their own ends while she pursues hers, like, she doesn't have to be held back by this other person, and she doesn't hold them back. They're each going to have their own lives and do their own thing, but they're drawn to each other. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Wish we had more time in the book with them together. What the heck does that say? Amusement flashed in his eyes. I had fed off that look once, when I had been starving, and thought such crumbs a feast. She's talking about Hermes. And I love this. I love this line, because I've used this before, actually, in a whole poem, comparing, what we're willing to accept from people to food, and how much we'll just live off of crumbs, because that's all we can get. And yeah, I love that she uses that, and that she's not starving for those crumbs anymore from Hermes. Goodbye, Hermes. See ya. You're a lot cooler in the animated Hercules Disney movie. So here, Athena has offered this life to Telemachus, where he's going to be like a ruler. He will be a good ruler, I thought, fair-minded and warm. He will not be consumed like his father was. He had never been hungry for glory, only for life. So Telegonus wants to get out and see the world. He wants to live. He's been stuck on this island for years, and he's actually a good soul, and he's not going to be a corrupt leader, and she can see that. So as hard as it is to let him go, she knows what she has to do. Dad. So she sees her father and gets to end her exile here. He would not ask where, he would not even wonder. So many years I had spent as a child sifting his bright features for his thoughts, trying to glimpse among them one that bore my name, but he was a harp with only one string, and the note it played was himself. And then he says, "You have always been the worst of my children. Be sure you do not dishonor me." Ugh. Bye, Dad. See ya. Like, she is just cutting out the people that she does not need. And, oh, I love this. I love this whole part of her journey. I felt reckless suddenly, sick of all my fretting and convincing, my careful plotting. It came to some by nature, but not to me. So she has had to spend so much of her life exhausting herself by being this manipulative, plotting, conniving person, and she's not that. She's not that. This is what so many of the people that she's dealt with have been, and she's had to, be like them in order to survive them, but she is not that. So just seeing how exhausted she must be from keeping up that antagonistic lifestyle. My legs are not good. I'm cross-legged, and Springer's been on my lap, and my legs are seizing up. Oh, let's see. An emotion was swelling in my throat. It took me a moment to recognize what it was. I had been old and stern for so long, carved with regrets and years like a monolith, but that was only a shape I had been poured into. I did not have to keep it. So that goes well with the last quote. That she has just been fulfilling this fate that's been laid out for her for so long, and now she's realizing she can change her fate. So she realized a long time ago where she was not the depths. She was not the depths themselves. She was the creature that was swimming in the depths, surviving. Now she realizes she's been poured into this mold, but she does not have to stay in it anymore. It is how you know you are different from your father, I said. Yes, his voice was sharp. It is the same for me, I said. Do not try to take my regret from me. He was quiet a long time. You are wise, he said. This conversation with Telemachus is very important because further down the page, he held my gaze. Something about him then reminded me strangely of Trigon and an unearthly quiet patience. I want to hear, he said. I had kept away from him for so many reasons. His mother and my son, his father and Athena, because I was a god and he a man, but it struck me then that at the root of all those reasons was a sort of fear, and I have never been a coward. I reached across that breathing air between us and found him. Oh. Beautiful. Would have liked a little more, but beautiful. She's finally found someone who wants to hear her. How lovely is that? Okay. But then it's hard after being traumatized and your interactions being with people who use you and abuse you for eternity. It is hard to accept being loved. Sometimes as I spoke, an anger would come over me and the words would curdle in my mouth. Who was he to be so patient while I spilled my blood? I was a woman grown. I was a goddess, and his elder by 1,000 generations. I did not need his pity, his attention, anything. So that's a common reaction. Somebody's kind to you and loves you and shows you something different than what you're used to, and that doesn't feel like home. That doesn't feel familiar, so it's scary, and we have this reaction to snap at them. So we're getting to the end here. These flowers had made Scylla a monster, though all she had done was sneer. Glaucus had become a monster of sorts, too, everything that was kind in him driven out by godhead. I remembered my old terror from Telegonus's birth. What creature waits within me? My imagination conjured up horrors. I would sprout slimy heads and yellow teeth. I would stalk down to the hollow and savage Telemachus to pieces. But perhaps, I told myself, it would not be like that. This part is so freaking beautiful and amazing because she is finally having the courage to meet her true self. And that is the point of the entire story, I think. So let's read the very end here. It is not, let's see. Oh, Circe, he says, it will be all right. It is not the saying of an oracle or a prophet. They are words you might speak to a child. I have heard him say them to our daughters, when he rocked them back to sleep from a nightmare, when he dressed their small cuts, soothed whatever stung. His skin is familiar as my own beneath my fingers. I listen to his breath warm upon the night air, and somehow I am comforted. He does not mean that it does not hurt. He does not mean that we are not frightened, only that we are here. This is what it means to swim in the tide, to walk the earth and feel it touch your feet. This is what it means to be alive. Overhead the constellations dip and wheel. My divinity shines in me like the last rays of the sun before they drown in the sea. I thought once that gods are the opposite of death, but I see now they are more dead than anything, for they are unchanging and can hold nothing in their hands. All my life I have been moving forward, and now I am here. I have a mortal's voice. Let me have the rest. I lift the brimming bowl to my lips and drink. The way I shrieked at that part because I didn't realize what was happening, that she was turning herself mortal. Wow, my reaction was like, a twist in the last sentence? Are you kidding me? I love it. It's beautiful. Perfect. I could say so much more about it, but I can't even think, and I'm running out of space on my camera, but I do have so many thoughts about this self-actualization that she experiences. Let's look at a few things from a conversation with Madeline Miller. She says, I also wanted to push back against the one-dimensional way she's been treated in popular culture. People generally remember her as a villain, a man-hating seductress. Why is seductress always bad? Why can't people just not be seduced if they don't want to be seduced? I mean, the woman is always blamed. And you know, I go on and on about this. They're any kind of sexy and they're blamed. They're evil. That is a villain, a seductress. She did this to me because she's sexy and I wanted her. and it's her fault. Is so pathetic. So yeah, I love that she flipped the script and gave Circe a voice in here. With Circe, I wanted to take a woman's life and set it at the center of an epic story. Ancient epic almost exclusively features male protagonists, and the few women who appear are there mostly as cameo, helpmeets, breeding stock, or obstacles to be overcome. Their stories matter only in how they touch the heroes. I wanted to flip the script to make Odysseus the cameo and Circe the epic hero. Love that. And then let's look at the discussion questions as much as we can. Number 2, a central theme of Homer's Odyssey is a longing for Nostos, homecoming. In what way is that theme reflected in Circe's story? Well, I think this entire thing is a homecoming in the sense that she is coming home to herself. She is discovering who she is. And first and foremost, our home is within ourselves, not really our surroundings. Circe says to Telemachus, "Do not try to take my regret from me." What does she mean by that? How has her regret shaped her? It's shaped her a lot. She regretted so much what she did to Scylla because of how it affected innocent mortals. And I think that might have really set her on the path of becoming immortal because she felt so much like them. She felt their pain. How does Circe's relationship with her father change over the course of the book? What do you make of their final conversation? I don't even know what I can say about that right now. Just that she goes from seeing him as this god, like he literally is a god, to realizing that he's just a self-absorbed jerk who doesn't love his kids and is a real piece of crap to her. And he does not deserve to be worshipped or put on an altar at all, and she doesn't have to kiss his ass anymore. Circe's gift is transformation. How does she transform from the beginning of the novel to the end? Why does she ultimately choose the path she does? I think that is what's so perfect about this book and the way that it ends, is because we get to see that transformation, that theme of transformation come full circle from the way that she transforms others so that she can have them for what she wants. She tries to make Glaucus a god so he can live forever and be with her. And then in the end, it's really about her own self-actualization and becoming who she believes she is. And she's so afraid to make that transformation because I totally get it. This is where I relate to her. She's scared of what is actually in her, what she will become when she takes this potion that reveals your true self. Because what if she becomes a monster like Scylla? And she has spent a lot of years believing that she is a monster on the inside. So she eventually is brave enough to take that step and finds that actually on the inside she's just a mortal. And I think that is so beautiful. She gets to discover who she is, and I have a lot of thoughts that I can't even articulate about this story, but I hope you will share your thoughts with me and tell me how much you liked this book, because I really, really loved it. And I definitely want to go back and read it at a time when I'm not so busy and can just think a little bit better about it. I'm really glad I got to Song of Achilles during a time when I just had nothing going on for a few days and really poured myself into it. So anyway, that is it for now. I've got to go do more Christmas stuff tonight. I will see you all next time. Hopefully it won't be as long of a break. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thank you so much for watching. And until I see you again, happy reading.